Hello YouTube, welcome back to Nutkin Farm. This is what happens when you're gone for 2 weeks, or 2 and a bit weeks. The grass at this time of the year still just grows like topsy, although it's now March 2023, the nights are getting cooler, the days are starting to get shorter, and the grass will start behaving itself soon as we come into harvest season. And yeah, but there's still a bit more mowing to do and probably a bit of a herbicide down the harvest row of the blocks that I am going to harvest, which won't be all of them. And we'll come to why in a minute. Most of you will probably have a fair idea. But to start with, I made a bit of a rod from my own back. A last video I made where I christened a macadamia tree Stupid, and I had friends get back to me saying, that was cruel, why did you do that? It's, you know, and I said, all right, well, how do I make it better? And they said, we want more of Stupid, tell me what Stupid's doing. So here we are, here's Stupid again. Last time you saw it, it was flowering like crazy and completely out of season in February. A real full crop of flowers, and I predicted that they wouldn't turn into nuts. And if you look at some of the flowers now, they're dead. There's a raceme, but just on the odd raceme, like there's one in here, you can actually see tiny little nutlets on the raceme. So it's having its best go at making out of season nuts. There's some more, you see them up against my hand, tiny little baby nuts, but unfortunately they'll be sizing up when the weather's getting cold, and because macadamia trees use the heat and the sun to make their crop, it's really not going to be a viable outcome. But anyway, poor old Stupid, there you are. You've got some fans now thanks to my abuse, and I hope you enjoy the fame. Most famous macadamia tree on my channel, next to poor old Garth over here, the A38, which is keeping its head well above the grass and putting on a bit of an autumn flush. And what we're noticing about the autumn flush is that it's much less affected by insects like leaf miner than the spring flush is, proving that it really is a better time of year to plant macadamias, and also for them to get a bit of a grow on before the winter dormancy. Anyway, time to talk some business. So those of you who've been following the channel will know that over the past few videos there's been a big concern, particularly in early 2023, about what price farmers would be paid for their crop. And we've gone through the reasons for that, the excess of supply, an almost 25% increase worldwide in macadamia nuts, and static or falling demand owing to the Ukraine war, and just general economic downturn, which affects the market for luxuries like macadamia nuts. And so I won't go over that again, but I will go over what the local industry in Australia have been signalling to farmers, that is the nut processor industry. We had signals from Marquee initially, who downgraded their price that they were paying to farmers from $3.80 to $2.90, and I did a video about that. They gave an indication to their growers that prices were looking even worse for this season, and that you might be looking at a number around about $2 a kilo. I then got a letter from Wally's in February saying that things were very dire and that farmers should expect a price between $1.50 and $2 a kilo. Now, these are just hints given to the industry, and there were some other hints as well which I'll come to, but they were very negative hints, and certainly the sort of the spectre of $1.50 a kilo. That's the record low price. Now, it was once $1.50 in 2007, but then $1.50 was worth a lot more than it is now. And of course, the input costs for making macadamias, particularly diesel and fertilizer, were much, much lower. And so in terms of an effective price relative to what you have to spend on making macadamias, which according to my mate Peter Fraser next door says is really about $3 a kilo if you don't count your own time as money. That is an absolutely terrible outcome for macadamia farmers, and it effectively would be a record low. So a lot of us drew breath and hoped that that wouldn't eventuate, because price offerings are due in about March, when the nuts start getting harvested and sent in. Now, just now we've received the price offering from Starman Webster. Now, Starman, to give you some context, particularly if you're watching overseas, it's owned by a large Canadian pension fund. Back when the prices were high, they went out for market share and offered more than anyone else. They offered $6.20 a kilo just a few years ago. They got a bit burned by the amount of nut they received and scaled back their offering. So they weren't the most generous offer last year, but their prices in general were always fixed to growers. And they are first out of the blocks this year, and let me show you what they are offering. Now, most nut processors, at least in Australia, will give you a table that looks something like this. It's a table showing how much kernel recovery you have on the left-hand side and the price per kilo that they pay. Now, the industry standard is 33% at 10% moisture. And down at 33%, you'll see exactly what they're offering. $1.50 a kilo. So the worst has come to pass. $1.50 a kilo for that. And look, for the high kernel recovery nuts, even if you get sort of 40% kernel recovery, which are the really big luxury nuts, we're only talking $1.92 a kilo for those. So for each extra percentage point, your price is only going to go up 6 cents. But it gets worse than that. All of the processors until this season had gone away from offering separate prices for commercial grade kernels. That's been reintroduced, and commercial kernels are the kind that aren't good enough for eating but are still good enough for making oil and some other products. And generally, commercial kernel was paid at premium kernel pricing. However, they're now separating out, so whatever you get rated as commercial kernel when your crop is tested is going to be paid at an absolute terrible price in terms of the recovery. You know, sometimes as little as 3 cents a kilo. So your commercial kernel is basically worthless to you, and often it's about 3 to 5% of your crop. So it's a meaningful difference in a ton of nuts. If you've got about 3% commercial, you're basically going to get paid next to nothing for it. But there's something else as well, and it's something that annoys me, in that the indication from Wally's that I received had quite a nasty sting in the tail and said, instead of giving you quality bonuses for your reject level going beneath 2%, they're changing the regime so that you'll only get the full price, quoted over here, the $1.50 a kilo. You'll only get that if your reject is below 2%. So anything above 2% reject, you're actually going to be penalised. So 3% reject, you get penalised 10 cents a kilo, and so on per that. So each extra percent, you get penalised 10 cents a kilo. You know, as compared to with the kernel recovery, for each extra percent you get paid 6 cents a kilo. You'll get docked 10 cents a kilo for every bit over that. Now, I got annoyed with the Wally's letter because, you know, when they're changing a system from a quality bonus for rejects 2% and under, when they're changing it to quality penalties, what they're really saying is, you know, the combined message is, we're going to pay you well less than the cost of production, but we only want the really, really Rolls-Royce nuts for that price. And if you try and give us, you know, any crap, we'll penalise you and pay you even less than that really low price. But it does smack a little bit of collusion, because if you get a letter from Wally's telling you that we're now going to introduce this quality penalty bonus, quality penalty for rejects above 2%, and then Starman's, a completely different company, comes out with exactly that penalty, you really can't help but conclude that the companies have been talking to each other about what they can screw growers down with, and that particular measure is a really nasty measure. I mean, I get it. They're scared that farmers will just hand in any old crop, or that they won't have sprayed this year and they'll be handing in a lot of insect-ridden crop. But, you know, to do a quality penalty on a price that's already so low is a pretty low thing in itself. And it smacks also of a lack of competition between nut processors if they're going to gang together and do this to growers. Now, this isn't my official price bulletin. I do one of these a year on my channel, but it was worth mentioning, both for the fact that the nut processors seem to be ganging up on growers, at least on the evidence I'm seeing, and that the price being offered is at the absolute low end of the range, the worst case scenario of $1.50 a kilo, which is, you know, on just even a family-run farm, about half the cost of actually producing the nuts. So what happens next? Well, my contractors and I have been sort of nutting over what to do in terms of harvesting. Block 2 here has got some nuts on the trees, not a hell of a lot. They'll start dropping fairly soon. They're 344s. You can see some nuts there. But really, unless nuts are very thick on the ground, it's not going to be worth picking them up, because the price you're getting is just too low. And yes, there's an argument that you should cut your losses, but you can actually end up increasing your losses if you spend too much on harvesting, getting the crop dehusked, which is about, you know, can be about 10 to 15 cents a kilo to dehusk, then sort, and then, you know, you've got to do what's called a full sort at Summerland House, where they do these fancy laser sortings and everything else to try and get the reject number down as low as possible so that you're not going to get penalised with the reject penalty. Now, all of that will take money away from you, because you'll end up with less crop actually going to the processor, and you'll be paying more overheads in order to get it there. It's a far cry from the days where the processors would visit farmers and treat them like princes and beg them for their crop at $6 a kilo. Now it's like they don't sort of want your crop. And you know, the fine print, I think, is something that's going to have to be very carefully watched. Now, that Starman agreement I showed you, I haven't received previous Starman agreements, so I can't do a comparison. But certainly one thing I've noticed is that when Starman's price always used to be fixed, I looked through the fine print of the contract to see if the $1.50 price was fixed. And even though the word notional doesn't appear anywhere, it's standard trade terms to call it notional price, it doesn't appear anywhere in these new terms of trade. There's some fine print further down the article that says Starman, you know, reserve the right at its sole discretion to change the price at any time owing to material changes in market conditions. What are material changes in market conditions? Well, it can be anything they say it is. You know, if the market deteriorates further, basically the indication is the price could drop even further. And add to all that, the payment plan is absolutely remarkable. They stretch out the instalment payments to you for this crop all the way till June 2024, right? By which stage you'll be midway through harvesting the next crop. And so they get your nuts straight away and they can sell them straight away, but they don't pay you the whole price until June 2024. So it's about 40% up front, but then lots of installments of 10%. Now, at any stage along those installments through to June 2024, they can cut the price on you so that you might be paid your $1.50 for the first lot, but if the headwinds get bad, they can reduce the price on these other installments. So the farmer's at risk even on these 10% payments for not a terrible amount of money. It'll be interesting to see what Wally's does, because Wally's has been the provider that traditionally pays 100% of the crop within 30 days. but we'll see what they end up doing, because I think there is a bit of talking going on between the processors, and the farmers are absolutely coming off second best. So look, I'll do a more thorough update on the competitive offerings of the market when they come out. So far it's only Starman, but yeah, like I said, it was worth headlining that there's trouble ahead, and you are going to need to read the fine print. If you don't think you're capable of that and you need a hand, get in touch with me via the Nutkin Farm website. My other job is I am a lawyer. I can read the fine print and I can understand it, but I certainly am not going to make an effort to sell it to you if the deal is a bad one. So, bit of a somber update, guys. I'm sorry about that. Other than that, it's a beautiful time to be at the farm and doing some farming. You just don't feel terribly much appreciated when the market price is so poor, and really this season is a write-off whether you have a good crop on your trees or not. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you again very soon.